Okay, so in this fifth video, I'm picking up from the fourth, we're going to talk about the whole idea of moving and centering points on a screen. So I want to just give you a time to understand that that is a very, very clever bit of code. It asks the actual screen you display for its width, pops it and holds it in there. It then divides it and holds it in there. I then use that width, which is actually the midway width going horizontally, and I pop it into my point. So I'm saying to my point, start midway, and I do the same thing with the height, you'll notice. Now these are very, very useful because when you're trying to work with a graphics window, you need to be able to do things like find the center of the screen in order to draw. Circles, for example, are a very, very good example. And when we come to that later, you'll find us repeating this idea, this chunk of code. Now, here's a nice little trick. Wouldn't it be really, really useful if I could store these lines of code and use them somewhere else, define them as some kind of, that routine? And what we can do later on is store them somewhere to use them later. Just as I've created a pause function, which all it does is just get a mouse click and then just waits for the mouse click. Don't worry about the rest of the stuff surrounding it. Wouldn't expect you to code that just yet. So we can use this way, and then we can get it to pass those values back. It's worth thinking about at this stage. Right, so we've been playing with points. We've been using a loop here to pause it using timer and then moving it. So it gives a really nice effect. Okay, the point is just a point. But the reason I've lingered for 5 videos on a point is that it gives you all the core concepts. What we're going to move on to next are different types of objects. But before we move on to them, we will look at this pause function a little bit longer and understand how you can do really interesting things with this. Okay, so let's try this in a slightly different way. This bit of code actually finds the center of the screen. But what happens if I wanted all of this code to run based not on the center of the screen, but wherever I clicked my mouse? Okay, so we'll keep on expanding the concepts. So what I'm going to do is comment out this lot so it's not run, and you do that by popping a hash in. Right, now what I want to try to do is actually give me my initial starting points based on a mouse click. So how do I do that? It's actually really, really straightforward. If I create a variable called ms, short for mouse, and I say to the window, the screen, when someone clicks the screen, get me that information. That's what that line of code does. And it stores it in this variable called ms. Not necessarily the best one. Let's call it mouse info. That's probably more useful if I were to give it a name. Okay, information about the mouse, or actually even better, we'll call it mouse click info. Right now, the reason I'm spending a bit of time over this is I want you to think about the ideas so they're clear in your head. So I'm going to set up a little bit of wire between every time I click the mouse, right? When I kick off, right? So I'm going to get rid of my pause. I'm not interested in my pause anymore. And for the time being, I'm going to get rid of this code so it doesn't muddle up what I've got on screen. I'm going to just temporarily dump it somewhere else, right? So we're back to really basics here. What we're saying is that there's my window, I create it. I then say to that window, every time when I click the mouse, first thing I do, rather than just pause, I want you to throw all the information related to clicking a mouse into this here, mouse click info. Now when I do that, watch what happens. Mouse click info, if I do mouse click info and do dot, I can get here, down here, get x, get y. I can find out where the horizontal value is and what the Y value is of where it's clicked. You think, that's interesting. Why don't I put the horizontal value in my W over here? Okay, so I've got mouse click. It's a mouse click info. I'm going to get the X position and pop it into W. Now it's a little bit confusing, so I wonder if we should just change our letters, but for the time being I won't, because that will give me the width location. And let's take the horizontal position from the mouse click info, get Y. You know, this is one area you might find confusing, these W's and H's, but look, in my points I've still kept all this code logic the same. I'm using W for the horizontal and W short for width and height, okay? And I'm basing it now not on centering, but on clicking the mouse, catching that information, asking that information to give back the X location and the Y, and popping it into here. Okay, a little bit tricky because these W's and H's and X's and Y's might confuse you. Hopefully this bit down here from previous videos you're reasonably confident with and you've played with. So shall we just test it? Right, so let's run it, drag it into screen. Now where shall I click my mouse? Let's click it down here. Oh, that was interesting. Right, seems to work. Stop it there, let's run it again. Click it there, bang. Oh, clicked exactly where I clicked it. It started and the 4 dots moved away from that center. So what this video teaches you is that you can actually use the mouse click to have a starting point or a destination point of where you want to get to. What happens, for example, could you write a piece of code where you start somewhere was fixed, and where you click it you will move the mouse to? So let's have a look at that. Right. Okay, so to get this next concept clear, right, and what I'm going to try to get, I'm going to go right back to one of the early videos by undoing a lot of these changes. We're going to have one point, I'm going to get rid of all of that. For the time being, I would just pop that in another file. It won't be happy with me just dumping it in there, but we won't be fiddling around with it, so let's not worry. Okay, let's get rid of that red. Okay, so let's go back to all of our basic points. Let's grab all the mouse stuff, let's get that out of the way for the time being. So what do I have here? I have here a point which I'm going to start, do you remember, right at the beginning at 100 and 100, right? Simple location. What I want to do now is I want to click the mouse. I want to set up a little connection. I want to say, okay, now at this point, if I click the mouse, I want to grab that information and I want to say the X value will be the difference. Now this is quite tricky, because what I want to do is if I click my mouse on the screen, it's going to give me the location of that. So what I could do is move it to that point. So shall we just try that first? Right? So I'm going to create these, store the information in here. When you click it, the point, let's see if we can just simply reposition the point at dx, the new position, and the new y. Okay? Now why am I doing it like this, and why don't I polish it? I'll pause in a second, because what I'm trying to do is get you to play and understand you need to play. So we're coming to the end of this video. Let's stop it and roll on through to the next.